It's good.
Voice is fine. Going good.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll start in 2 minutes more, okay?
Yeah, sure.
So how's everything there at US?
Here the conditions are a little better. I mean, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while presenting, you can do full screen, like when you start your presentation. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
So you guys are working from home right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, working from home.
I think one more month.
No, I think.
Yeah,
Maybe.
So at US, it's not lockdown yet.
Yeah, like means it's lockdown, but not curfew. Means people can go anywhere if they want. They can go to office also.
Okay.
So like it's not good. Means I don't know if lockdown will not be there. How will this thing stop?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
Yes.
Curfew is also getting lifted in India tomorrow.
Sorry.
Curfew is also getting lifted in India tomorrow. By tomorrow.
Yeah. But like that zone distribution is fine there if red zone is there. So means India is doing really well, but in US it is.
Yeah. Going perfect. So Parihar sir, are you there? You've joined, right?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, good evening, sir.
Yeah.
So could you like put a message in the group? A reminder message
I think
so that
you
people
have
can
already
join in.
sent it.
Okay.
I think you have already sent it, but okay, people.
Yeah.
30 people are. You can wait for 4 to 5 minutes.
Okay, fine.
Okay, we can start at 5.
Okay, good.
Okay. I think you can start now.
Yes, you sure?
I think we should start now. People will join on the way.
Okay.
It's already near about.
So, good evening, everyone. Today we are at IEEE AIML 4.0 virtual talk series. Today we have with us Ms. Kriti Gupta, and she is a final year PhD student at IIT Mandi. And currently she is working as research fellow at University of Tennessee, USA. And her research interests focus on machine learning, deep learning, pattern recognition for medical applications. So with this, I welcome you, Ms. Kriti, for your talk.
Okay, thank you so much, Anupma, for this introduction. Today, I will be talking about machine learning and deep learning techniques for medical image analysis. And here, I will show some highlights about microscopic image analysis, in which images are extracted and acquired from microscopes. So as we all know that ML and DL techniques are actually changing the future of healthcare, and similarly for medical based applications. So now we will see something about medical based applications. Outline for my talk will be, first I'll cover some general overview of problem statements, particularly for medical images and related applications, and what is the motivation and requirement of building computer assisted diagnostic solutions, particularly for autoimmune disorders. Next, I'll talk something about data skew balancing methods, which is a very important challenge in medical domain. And in this, I'll cover Siamese framework and then generative adversarial networks. So I'll start. On first day, Mr. Vishav he has effectively covered very good literature and things about deep neural networks and all the information about layers, like what are convolutional layers, pooling layers, how to use the activation functions, and how to use the classifier and regression. So this is a general layout of a conventional framework which can be used for any machine learning algorithm or any deep neural network based algorithm. Let's say we have these car images.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Kiti, you need to switch on the slide.
Your slide is not.
Also, slides are not changing.
Sorry.
You need
Yeah.
to do the
Could you
slide.
please next slideshow? Turn on to slideshow, and your slides are not moving. So kindly please check up.
Okay. Just let me check.
Okay, we are on the first slide right now.
Oh,
kindly share your screen again. That's the way out. Share your screen again.
Okay. You can now click on
now is it?
the slideshow.
Yeah, it's already selected.
Hey.
Just a minute. Now is it moving?
No.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Okay. Moving now. But you should select the press F5, I think. Control plus F5.
Yeah. It's already selected.
Now the slides are moving, but it's not at like slideshow full screen. It's not in full screen.
Okay. Let me check.
If it's fine, then we can go ahead with this.
Right.
We had seen any comments?
Now is it fine?
Like it is moving, but not on full screen. So,
Okay.
Rishabh, can we go like
Yeah.
go like this?
Yeah, we can, but okay.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Should I broadcast the content?
Okay, you can broadcast. Yes, I'll ask to change.
Okay.
That would be fine. Let Rishabh broadcast the presentation for you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Because maybe people can have some problems in viewing.
Yes.
So Rishabh, could you please do it?
Yeah, please. 1 minute.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Kriti, now you can start.
Okay.
Over to you.
So we are on the first slide right now.
Yeah. Should I switch to second?
Okay, Rishabh. Should I ask you to change the slides, or you will manage?
Yes. No, you tell next, then
Oh.
he'll proceed to the next slide. Yeah.
Okay. So today we will talk about ML and DL techniques for medical image analysis. Next slide, please. And which is actually changing the future of healthcare and related medical applications. So now the outline, which is on next slide, I'll cover about introduction, general overview, some medical image analysis applications, and then motivation and directions of building a computer-assisted diagnostic solutions for autoimmune disorders. Then I'll discuss something about data skew balancing strategies, which will be consisting of Siamese framework and generative adversarial network. Next slide, please. So this is a conventional framework. We can see in a conventional deep neural network based classifiers, we have some layers. That layers can be conventionally convolution layer, activation layers, pooling layers, input and output layers. So let's say if we have car image as an input, then we can feed those input images to any neural network or any kind of traditional machine learning based networks if we want to make a classifier. We can see these are the different type of layers here: layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and layer 4. And layer 1, which typically depicts low level feature representation of data, which means blob like structures, corner edges, which are known as low level features. Layer 2 and layer 3, these are generally gives us mid level feature representation, and the last layers gives us high level feature representation, which are highly resembling with the input data. So next slide. In a conventional framework, if we want to design any machine learning based framework for any kind of problem definition, we need to focus on some key points, like what kind of features should we learn from the input data.
Ms. Gupta? Hello?
But we should not apply any kind of technique from the pool of the techniques. We have to select some particular technique which will fit for our input data. So first we need to understand the input data. We need to understand what kind of feature representation would be important and appropriate for such type of data. So first important point here is learning features or learning appropriate features, which should be discriminative and which should be effective for our problem statement. Next, we have to design a deep neural network, which will be a cascading structures of convolutional layers, pooling layers. We need to decide what kind of activation function should be used, and at the end of dense layer. And meanwhile, we should also remember that the system should be an end-to-end network. The learning should be happen end-to-end in an end-to-end manner. So what are the things that should be considered here? Next slide. These are the first is what is input output mapping, because as we all know that in any kind of machine learning or transfer or deep neural network based learning, some input output mapping will be there, some transformation will be there. So we have to focus on that also. Next, how are the parameters trained, how many parameters are there, and is our data is sufficient to train all those parameters. How it is computationally expensive, because we cannot afford so computationally expensive algorithm or system for any kind of problem. How efficient it is and what kind of learning it is, supervised and unsupervised. And on top of that, we need to know something about the data and the amount of data. Is our data sufficient or not? Next slide. So considering all these things while designing a computer assisted diagnostic solution for any kind of problem. And hello.
Please use Cisco WebEx application for the presentation. It helps us that slide is broadcasted or not to the participants. No.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think you are using PowerPoint changing the slide.
Yes.
Yeah, please be on the screen of Cisco WebEx so that you will know that slides are changed.
Okay. Okay. Then it's now fine. So are you able to see the slides here?
No. I'm able to see the slides, but participants should also be able to see the slides so that.
Okay. So what should I do now, because it is visible?
Okay.
From my.
You can do it on the Cisco WebEx application. Okay.
Yeah. Now is it fine, right?
Yeah, now it is fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So I believe that the how to move the slides here.
No, I'll move it.
Okay, I think you will move the slides, right?
I'll move the slides.
Okay. So I hope that the earlier slides which I was explaining about conventional technique or a general overview, and all of you are aware of that because we have already discussed that thing in our first session. So I'm starting from here itself. Here we will talk something about that is medical image analysis. There are so many fields in which we can apply these techniques, particularly to design computer assisted diagnostic solutions for histopathological image analysis, cell image analysis. In histopathological, there are very hot applications just like breast cancer identification or cervical cancer identification. And for cell image analysis, most of the work is going on for identification of immune related diseases. And then these techniques can be applied for radiological analysis, brain analysis. In brain, but the research is going on for MRI analysis. In MRI, some 3D, 7D transformation is there. Some applications are there to enhance the visibility of MRI scans or for super resolution, etc. And some kind of lesion detection, skin detection are also there in this domain. On top of that, so many kind of image synthesis methodologies are also applied for generating images for medical data. So I'll talk something about that also here. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so we can see some examples here. These like this orange one is the example of an image. It is a fundus image which is collected to diagnose diabetic retinopathy. This is collected to diagnose the blood cancer, and this is X-ray image. This is some tree kind of structure which is present in lung images. So we need to identify different lesion or different abnormal structures in all these type of images, and when we work on such type of images, it will be considered as medical imaging applications. Next slide, please. Okay, so now nowadays this MLDL applications are applying in all kind of fields and sectors like fraud identification, credit card fraud, or in scene image analysis for automated autonomous driving, etc. So why it is different and difficult for ML and DL techniques in healthcare and medical applications? So first, all of us know that there is a very less amount of medical data present for such type of studies, because like if we want to consider any kind of problem definition, just like let's say natural seal classification or identification, so there we can actually dare to collect some data, some training data on our own. If we have good camera, if we have some domain knowledge, then we can collect the data and start our algorithm, at least for training. But for medical image applications, we have no advantage for such thing, because we need to be dependent on a medical expert, technician, or any pathologist, radiologist for such type of work, because these are the people who is actually domain expert and who will tell us what kind of data should be collected and how that data should be collected. So here in medical applications, the problem of less amount will always be there, and we need to deal with that along with our algorithm. For inputs, it is obviously given by someone else and it is very limited, and for output prediction and understanding also, we are entirely dependent on human user, and here in our case who are medical experts. So there will always be difficulty in data acquisition and problem formulation, and we have to consider all these challenges in medical application, whether either it is disease identification or diagnosis, or we are working with omics data. Omics means proteomics or genomics data, which is useful in drug discovery and designing any kind of medical based application to develop any smart health devices or disease prediction and triaging. Okay, next slide. So here I'll talk about one particular disease. You can relate the characteristic of this disease or the feature representation or classification criteria that I'll be talking about with your problem definition, because I believe like in medical application, the challenges and motivation is more or less same, because we all have challenge of less amount of data, how to train the parameters with such less amount of data. And if we have if we want to identify some abnormal kind of characteristics among whole cell distribution or whole data distribution, then there will be a data bias, data imbalance between the samples, because abnormal kind of samples will be in very less amount. So there will be a problem of data imbalance also. To consider all those challenges and to give you a glimpse of how to deal with those challenges, I will talk about a small study of my PhD work, which is based on identification of autoimmune disorders in blood serum. So autoimmune disorders, it is known as disorder because it is range of so many diseases, around 50 to 80 diseases, and which arises due to some malfunctioning of human immune response. As we know that there are two main important components in our human blood, antigens and antibodies. And antibodies are actually the guard, means security guards of our system. So in autoimmune disorder, these antibodies are malfunctioned and they are trying to attack and kill healthy blood cells and tissues. That's why, means they are immune to itself. That is why it is known as autoimmune disorder, and it is a very dangerous disease. So to identification of these autoimmune disorders in patient blood serum, some microscopic technique is there that I'll be talking about in next few slides. Here we will talk about a small study for identification of this disorder. Next slide, please. These are some example of autoimmune disorder. As I've already mentioned that there are around 50 to 80 diseases, and there are all are well-known disease like in bones, rheumatoid arthritis, or in thyroid, Hashimoto's, Graves' disease, in brain also like multiple sclerosis, in blood leukemia, which is blood cancer. So all of these diseases are very well-known disease, and all diseases are categorized as autoimmune diseases. So for identification of these disorders in human blood serum, what happens? Next slide. Yeah, so this is a laboratory protocol that we need to follow and we need to understand, because we need to understand the domain knowledge, and on top of that we will learn how to make the feature representation. So to identify such type of disorder, what happens? First we take the patient blood serum from patient body, and then it is contaminated with the fluorescent dye. This fluorescent dye, the characteristic of this dye is that it will attach to the anti-nuclear antibodies, which are malfunctioned antibodies in human blood serum. And when this fluorescent dye will be added to patient blood serum, we need to identify, we need to visualize this blood serum. So we will take a cell substrate. This is a general cell substrate. Basically in this technique, human epithelium type 2 cell substrate is taken, and this patient blood serum is added to this cell substrate. Since this cell substrate is having antigens, so this anti-nuclear antibody will react to those antigens, and as we have already contaminated anti-nuclear antibody with fluorescent, so we will see the fluorescent cluster kind of thing, and it is visualized on microscope. So this is the setup. First we have microscopic slide. On top of that, HEP2 cell substrate is taken on which antigen is present, and it is added to the anti-nuclear antibody, which is malfunctioned and which we'll need to identify. So reaction of both these things make a combination, and this combination will be visualized by a medical expert, and on screen we can see different type of fluorescent pattern. So we can see this different type of fluorescent pattern. These are fluorescent because we have added fluorescent dye. And how these are, what is the significance of these fluorescence? Means all of these are malfunction. So here nothing is normal. If some cell is seen as fluorescent, means that is abnormal, and that is representing some disease. So why are these different types? Because these are different type of anti-nuclear antibodies, and this will occur different type of autoimmune disorders. So here our task is to identify and is to classify. Here I am taking these 7 classes, means 7 type of diseases. So we need to identify and classify these 7 type of diseases separately. So basically here this is a 7 class classification framework. Fine. we can see one way is to classify them in 7-class classification framework, and another problem statement here is to classify all these samples in 2 class. We can see in this first class it is something different, because here fluorescent patterns are very less, and in all of these last 6 images these fluorescent patterns are very high in number. So this category is something different, and all these categories are something different. Here I'm going to talk you about the classification of in 2. Basically, it is a binary class classification. This class 1, and all these 6 classes as class 2. Next slide. Yes, so this is the class 1, which are which are known as mitotic patterns, and all these 6 classes are non-mitotic patterns. So while designing this kind of binary classification problem, now itself we can analyze what kind of problems must be there. Since we have taken only one class at one side, so the samples of this class would be very less, and samples from these classes would be on the other side. So samples from these classes would be very high. Next slide. So what are the challenges? Motivation I have already discussed. We need to design a computer assisted diagnostic solution, whether in form of a computer assisted detection based system or diagnostic system. Detection based system is considered as CAD-E. It is generally written as CAD-E, and computer assisted diagnostic solutions, it is written as CAD-X solution. And our main motivation is that we don't want to replace the medical experts or pathologists, but we just want to assist them so that they can more focus, they can spend their time on complicated cases, and easy cases can be handled by this algorithm. So what are the main challenges? We can ourselves see that there is very high intra-class variation, and along with the less inter-class variation, so it will be very difficult to classify them. We have very less number of samples, and on top of that we have very high sample imbalance between classes, because in one class we have very less number of samples, and in other class we have high number of samples. And in general, in all kind of medical scenarios, we have only 5 to 10% samples belonging to the target class, which is our abnormal class. Let's say if we are talking about cervical cancer classification, so there also we have maximum to maximum 10 to 15% abnormal cases in whole data distribution. And if we want to proceed our algorithm with good precision and accuracy, we need to require some different things like accurate segmentation masks and others. So all these things are secondary, but we need to talk about these challenges first. Apart from these challenges, in domain itself, we had to address so many challenges, like at the time of image acquisition, the dye concentration was not proper, image acquisition was not proper, camera was not proper, there was some problem with the lenses, some illumination problem. So we can deal all those type of problem using image processing or pre-processing techniques, but these things we need to address here in the framework of design when we design our classification model. Next slide. Okay, so we will talk about data imbalance, which is a big issue in such type of problem definition. So at first glance, it will look very easy. Okay, first we acquire HEP2 specimen images, then we need to process it either using single cell images or complete specimen. Specimen means collection of multiple nuclei or multiple cells in one image. So this is known as specimen. So to extract, we can extract single cell, single nuclei from the specimen images, and then we can apply some good feature extractor. When we didn't have this deep learning based thing, we used to do this feature extraction thing using handcrafted or hand engineered features. We generally used to apply some morphology or texture based feature representation, and then we can apply a mitotic versus non-mitotic specimen classification. Next slide. But here our main issue is this, like when we design the classifier will be biased towards our majority class, which is not our class of interest in this case, because we are interested in mitotic samples, which is minority. So to understand and to illustrate this kind of thing, I have used one feature representation, which is simple 2-dimensional feature representation. And if you can understand, this feature representation is a morphology based feature representation, and according to the characteristics of the classes, I have extracted nuclear area and parameter. So we will not go in this thing, we will just see how to balance the data here. So this is while using the pure data, when we had not applied any kind of data tree balancing method. This is the distribution of data. We can see so many green samples, which are majority class samples, are intermingled with the red samples, and red samples are very less in amount. So this is the discrimination boundary, this is the classification boundary, and it is not working at all. And it is also very difficult to separate these green class data from this red class data. Next slide. Okay, so conventionally or in starting, we generally apply undersampling methods. Undersampling means to remove some samples from the majority class. This is our majority class here, which is non-mitotic class. We can remove some samples from here, but it is highly empirical. We don't know how to remove those samples, what criteria should be applied, and anyhow already we have so many less samples that the training of classification is classifier is very difficult. So how to remove these samples, is it feasible or not? But to see their effect, we have applied this undersampling method also, and we have removed some potential samples from this data. Next slide. And when we have applied this undersampling, we can see that there is a little bit shifting of the hyperplane, and these green samples which were intermingled with these red samples have actually removed. Maybe these samples were in the subset we have removed from the data, but this might possible that next time we will not remove these samples. So this is highly empirical method. We need to look something different in this domain. Next slide. Okay, oversampling method. On very first day of this talk series also, we have discussed something like in question answer session. Vishal have discussed something about oversampling method, and he has discussed, he has talked about SMOTE technique. So oversampling method is, it is also one of the oversampling methods, SMOTE technique. Oversampling method can be of two types. Done in data space or done in feature space. Data space means we have raw data, we have raw images, we need to do something on that sample space itself. In this way, we generally augment the data by rotation, flipping, horizontal flipping, vertical flipping, something like that. So this is a oversampling method in data space, and another is the feature space. Feature space means first we will extract the features and we will augment the data in that feature. Let's say if we have feature representation consisting of x1 and x2 data, then we can apply an oversampling method, SMOTE, which is synthetic. Next slide, please. Synthetic minority oversampling technique. And this synthetic minority oversampling technique, what we do, if we have two samples in that feature space, then we draw a line between those two samples and introduce some random points on that line. In that way, we augment the data and we try to capture the characteristic of that feature space. So this is a oversampling technique. When we have applied this oversampling technique, this was also not very working, because the samples which were intermingled, the samples of majority class which were intermingled with these red samples, so we couldn't do nothing with those samples, and this is the main problem here. Although the plane is slightly shifted, because now we have more number of minority class samples, so we need to go for something different. Next slide. Next method is a bagging method. Bagging method means to make bags of the majority class. If we have 1000 samples in majority class and some 100 samples of minority class, which is our targeted class, so we will design some bags consisting of 100 classes from the majority class. In this way, we will have 10 different type of subsets. Next slide, please. And in those subsets, each subset of majority class will be treated as an input data with complete minority class. Means we have these 4 subsets from majority class, and for minority class we will take complete data set as it is. So we will make 4 different classifiers, means the number of classifiers will be equal to the number of subsets what we have designed from the majority class data. And while testing, we will pass our test data to all these classifiers, and at the end we will take a decision according to the majority rule. If the sample is classifying as positive across more than half of the classifiers, then we will declare that test method, that test classifier as positive class, otherwise it is negative class. So this is a bagging method. The advantage of this bagging method over others, what we have discussed previous, is that we are not doing anything, any kind of augmentation or any kind of balancing like explicitly on the data. We are just applying an intelligent technique to treat the data, to tackle with the data. So this is bagging method. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next method is weights alteration method. Here we don't need to do anything about the feature space or the data space. We do something in the classifier. So this is the objective function of you can use any kind of classifier. I'm just giving a glimpse, or I'm giving you an idea how to do such type of things. So this is an objective function of SVM, support vector machine based classifier, which is actually motivated to get a maximum margin hyperplane between both class samples. Maximum margin means the distance between closest sample of positive class and negative class. So this is the margin. So here the motivation of SVM is to get the maximum margin hyperplane so that they can discriminate as far as possible. So this is the objective function of that, and C is the cost function that is based on the samples of both the classes simultaneously. Since we have less number of classes for this class, so we want to do something with this cost, and we split this cost for positive class separately and negative class separately, and then we change the cost according to the number of samples of or according to our problem statement. So this is this kind of method. Now people are using this kind of method in cross entropy loss function also, that is generally used in deep neural network based things. Next slide. Okay, so right now we have read some conventional things: oversampling, undersampling, weight-based balancing or bagging. Apart from bagging, we can apply some boosting technique also, ensemble classifier also, where some weak learners or weak classifier make a good classifiers. And all of these boosting, bagging kind of techniques are actually based on majority voting based decision making. So right now we will discuss something different, which is known as Siamese framework. Siamese is a few shot learning based framework, means we want to make the model learn using very few number of samples. We have data set in which non-mitotic class samples are very high in number and mitotic class samples are very few in number. We want to make the classifier using these samples only. We don't want to generate some sample, but we need to apply an intelligent trick so the combination or so the data comparison would be high in number. So we will see how it works. Next slide. Okay, so this Siamese framework is a distance metric learning based framework. So many other frameworks, so many other classifiers are also based on distance metric learning, simple distance like L1 or L1 norm or Euclidean, any kind of distance. And here the notion of Siamese framework, the agenda of Siamese framework says that we need to design a framework, we need to design a classifier where the two images which belong to the same class should have smaller distance between each other, and the two images which are belonging from the different classes should have higher distance between each other. So our problem will be solved, because what we want to do in any classifier, we want to make the intra-class distance as small as possible and inter-class distance as far as possible, as high as possible. So this is the same kind of agenda is with the Siamese framework also. And to achieve this kind of thing means images belonging to the same class should be at smaller distance, and vice versa. It learns a function which maps an input data to an embedding space, to a different kind of feature space, and in that feature space that distance is computed. And we will incorporate this Siamese framework in deep neural network based framework. So we will design a different kind of loss function that actually accomplish all these things, this distance based thing, and this will learn a function which can map input data to a latent space or to an embedding space, and in that embedding space it is assumed that it will calculate a distance between sample and it will discriminate the sample appropriately. Next slide. Okay, so this is a general overview. We are taking this mitotic as an example. We are taking these mitotic samples belonging to similar class. We will pass these two samples to two different type of frameworks. Here we will use these two frameworks are these two deep neural networks which are exactly similar. So x1 is input image, x2 is input image, and we will get some feature representation or some kind of function will be applied here on those images, which is fx1, fx2. If these belonging to same class, then we need to make this distance dw, which is fx1 minus fx2, we need to make this small, and if these are belonging to different classes, we need to make this large. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I have already said, we are using CNNs for feature extraction thing. X1 is any image, X2 is any image. This is L2 normalization, and this is the feature image. If these belonging to mitotic class, that should be less, otherwise it should be high. Next slide. Okay, so what is our learning objective? Now we will start designing our learning objective. This framework, Siamese framework, which is based on similarity-based learning, it says that we need to design different combinations of samples so that learning can happen effectively and more appropriately among only those samples which are provided as our input data. So here another thing comes into picture, which is known as anchor. Anchor is just a name. Anchor is just an image which is picked. We have two classes, minority class and majority class. Let's say minority class is positive class and majority class is negative class. So we will pick another sample which belongs to the positive class. This is a general criteria. This is an compulsory criteria that the anchor should be picked from the positive class itself, and in that way the distance between anchor and positive should always be less than the distance between anchor and negative. This is the same notion what we have discussed in previous slides, and similarly FA minus FP minus FA minus FN should be less than equal to 0. But how much they should be apart, because in every classifier, if SVM, we will talk about SVM, I have talked about margin. Like margin is the distance by which two samples belonging to different classes are far apart. So here also we will introduce some this type of thing, means if these two pairs are taken, so how far are these samples are in the feature space or embedding space. So we will introduce that term here. Next slide please. Okay, I think someone, okay, on previous slide. Is it fine? Like my voice and slide presentation, everything is fine there?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, because I think we are getting some message. That's why I'm confused.
Yeah, I think some.
It is fine.
It's audible, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So we will introduce this alpha term, which is the margin between negative and positive pair images, just like other classifiers. Next slide. Okay, so to accomplish that learning objective, we will design this kind of new loss function is known as triplet loss function, because now we have three things. One is anchor, positive and negative. Anchor is always taken from the positive samples, and now we will calculate the distance between anchor and positive sample and between anchor and negative sample. In this,
भाई मैंने अपना वो नहीं चलाना.
can you please mute your mic? Okay, so we will have triplet here, and the loss function which is designed using all these triplets are known as triplet loss function. Here also same thing, distance between anchor and positive, we have to minimize this, and distance between anchor and negative, we have to maximize this. So the loss function is completely written as fxa minus fxp and fxa minus fxn. It should be separated by a margin alpha, and since we want this value as positive, so it will be designed as a hinge loss function kind of thing, means maximum of this entity or this or 0. J is the total number of triplets generated in this thing, and alpha I've already talked about represents the margin. Next slide. Okay, so for selection of active triplets, because while designing these triplets, we will have so many triplets here. So while for selection of active triplet, these two conditions should be satisfied, which is well known. Means the distance between anchor and negative and distance between anchor and positive, means distance between anchor and positive should always be lesser than anchor negative, and it should be separated by an alpha. So we will select only those triplets. And now we have got all this work is happening in the embedding space. So basically that the features what we are acquiring in this embedding space, because learning is happening using this triplet loss function. It is similar to any kind of loss function in the CNN or deep neural networks. Like if we are applying any cross entropy or any kind of loss function, it is the network is learned and network is trained using backpropagation method. So instead of using that traditional loss function, we will use this triplet loss function, and the learning of network or all the layers will be happening based on this triplet loss function. So now these are actually one kind of feature representation that will be treated as final feature representation for our input cell images. So those it's up to us how many dimensional feature representation do we want in this case. Generally, like right from the starting, when these kind of networks were designed, they have selected some 128 dimensional or maximum to maximum 256 dimensional feature representation. So after acquiring all these feature representation, which is our CNN based embedding, we can apply any to run this triplet loss function, we can apply any kind of CNN architecture, and after that final layer we can extract those embedding, we can extract those feature representation, and we can apply any classifier. I generally apply SVM classifier or naive based classifier on such type of feature representation. You can add one fully connected layer also at the end of the CNN and use those embeddings as features and use any classifier for discrimination. Next slide. So what we are doing, basically we are taking positive images, anchor images, both belonging to mitotic class, and this is negative class. We are passing all these images in CNN, and how this learning is happening. Let's say this is embedding space. We want to minimize the distance between positive and anchor and maximize the distance between anchor and negative, and margin is the difference between the distance of both the pairs. Next slide. Okay, so this is an illustration for Siamese framework. Means we need to know how this framework is working. When we have acquired the embedding after last layer of the CNN, after everything, means after proper training, after applying loss function and everything, back propagation, we have extracted CNN based embedding. Suppose it's n dimensional. So how to see if this embedding is actually working, actually discriminative or not? So we can see this kind of feature representation in any type of classifier, any kind of problem statement, and we should see before applying classifier randomly, we should see how these features are discriminative after the network. So this is a feature representation of TSNE, and this is a TSNE plot. TSNE is a technique, stochastic neighboring embedding technique, which is used to virtually see the distribution of the data in feature space or data space from high dimensional. Like initially my images were of 224 cross 224 dimension. So we can see the distribution of those images or those features in two virtual dimension, which is X and Y. So here we can see these blue one samples are non-mitotic samples and red one are the mitotic samples. And in this area, in this space, the red one are highly intermingled and intermixed with the non-mitotic ones. And we don't think like it is hopeless to think that any classifier can actually discriminate between those samples. So this is the distribution of the raw data. But when we have applied this triplet loss function using CNN, we got the embedding. So it was 128 dimensional embedding. We have seen it using only two virtual dimensions. So in this case, we can see that after applying this proposed method means method was already available. We just need to borrow the appropriate thing according to our problem statement. So applying this thing, we can see that in this area only red samples are there and blue samples are actually very far apart from them. And any good nonlinear or linear classifier can discriminate between the samples. So we can apply any classifier on this sample. So while measuring while see the some performance measure also, we can see that this is working quite well. Okay, so next slide.
So Kriti, I would like to, sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
there is a question that what is anchor image?
Okay, so should I answer this here?
Yeah, because I think the slide is gone. So maybe
Okay.
it will be useful
So
for that person.
okay. Can you please reverse the slides? 2-3 slides back. So anchor image is nothing different. What we will do, we have two folders. One folder is of positive image and one folder is of negative images. So positive is our minority class, means our targeted class, which we need to identify from the rest of the samples. In your problem statement, positive class is of any type, whether it is abnormal class or cancerous class. So anchor is just a name, is just a nomenclature. It is another image which is picked from the positive class folder. So first we will take an anchor image from the positive class folders, and we will have rest of the n-1 positive images from this folder. So anchor image is always taken from the positive class, and now we will calculate the distance between positive that we have already picked with all positive class samples, and distance between this anchor and all negative class samples. Simultaneously, in next round, we will pick another positive class sample as anchor, and then we will calculate the distance. Same thing, same process will be done. So I hope now this thing would be clear. Means this is not any kind of specific image or any. This is just a nomenclature, and this is just a trick to make the loss function. Okay, please go ahead. Next slide. Next. Okay. So till now we have seen oversampling, undersampling methods, weight balancing methods, and after that we have seen this Siamese framework. So next thing which is very hot nowadays is generation of synthetic samples. So earlier this technique like generation of synthetic samples, we have actually done this in oversampling earlier on some third, fourth slide, oversampling at data space or feature space, but that there we were actually done something with the original data. Here we want to generate some new samples which can actually learn the distribution of original samples. Earlier this technique, the notion of generating synthetic samples were very widely used in other applications, like to increase the data for natural images, scene images, indoor outdoor images. But here we have some different kind of problem. First, we have very less amount of data and we have very imbalanced data. So it is a good idea to apply this kind of technique, technique for generating synthetic samples here in this domain also. So here what our motivation says, we have less number of samples for mitotic class, which is minority class. So we need to generate sample from these class samples itself. We don't need to do anything with the non-mitotic or majority class because we have sufficient number of samples from that class. So this is the what we will do here is this. We have original samples and we will generate synthetic samples. Next slide. Okay, so we will use these generative adversarial networks. All of you have heard about these generative adversarial networks nowadays. Everyone is doing some different kind of work with these. They are molding, they are tuning these generative adversarial networks for their works. So here also, like, we will try to generate some synthetic samples using GANs or generative adversarial networks. What GAN says, GAN tries to learn the distribution of original samples, and it is consisting of two different type of models. These models are CNN based models, simple networks, simple CNN networks, and we will say those two CNN networks as generative. One is generative network, another one is discriminative network or discriminative model. These are, you can use any type of CNN based model according to your images or your input data. So what generative model does, generative model models the distribution of original samples, and it passes those images to the discriminator, to the another network. And what discriminator does, it learns the boundary between the classes. What are the classes here? One class which samples it got from the generative models, which are the fake samples, and it has the repository of real samples also. So it will see whether the generated samples generated from the generative model is good enough or not. So this kind of mechanism is there. Generator will generate the samples. But it doesn't see any kind of real samples. I will tell you how. And discriminator is kind of a policeman. It restricts it the generator, like, okay, now you are generating fine structures, fine images, you carry on, or you should stop your criteria. Okay, so next slide. So this GAN, three words are there: generative, adversarial, networks. Generative, to generate the samples. Adversarial, adversary means to work against each other. As we have seen in previous slide, G and D. G means generator and discriminator. They are working against each other. G is generating and D is stopping it, like don't generate or generate, something like that. Then G will again generate the images, and network is any deep neural network. So nowadays, so many people are working and doing something with generative adversarial networks in medical domain also. Few works are there, you can read those works, and references are attached at the end. Next slide. This is the complete framework. So we will start from here. This is a generator, which is a deep neural network consisting of convolution, pooling, or some, all those layers. First, we will make a random noise, a vector of random noise of any dimension, let's say 128 dimension, and we will put this random noise. We don't know anything about real images as of now, and the random images are used as an input to the generator. Then this generator will learn something from this random noise, and it will generate some image. These generated images are termed as fake images. Now these fake images will be used as an input to the discriminator. Discriminator is another network. This discriminator has another repository of real images. These are our real images, which is mitotic images. So these real images will also be used as an input to the discriminator. Now here the discriminator will work as a classifier. It will discriminate between these samples and these samples, whether these samples are quite likely or not, right or wrong, and it will calculate a loss. The loss can be any kind of a distance-based loss. So we can see, like in initial iterations, initial like rounds of the algorithm, it is like well obvious that since we have passed a random noise to the generator, so it will generate something random, it will generate something rubbish. But when discriminator will calculate the loss, then this loss will be back propagate from the discriminator and from the discriminator to the generator, and then generator will learn to generate some better kind of fake images. So for generator, fakeness is actually good, but for discriminator, fakeness is actually bad. It will try to reduce the fakeness of the images, and it will try to increase the fakeness of the images. Means the images should be as good fake as real images. So this is the general framework of generative adversarial networks. Next slide. Okay, so what are the parameters need to be learned here? Let's consider these are some notion. Z is our noise vector, which is input to the generator. GZ is the generator's output, means it is generating fake images. And X is the training sample, which is the repository of real images and which is input for the discriminator. Now discriminator output for real. For X is DX, and it should be X real, which is defined as 0, 1, and discriminator has now will give us two output, one for real images and one for fake images. And fake images are actually the output was actually the output of the generator, that is ZZ. So it will be now input for the discriminator. So discriminator will give us two outputs, DX and DZZ, one for real images and one for ZZ. So two different algorithms will be working here simultaneously in adversarial manner at discriminator D it should maximize the dx, which is the output for real images, and it should minimize the dzz, means it should minimize the fakeness of the generated samples which it has got from the generator. And at generator G, it has to maximize the fakeness of the samples, means it has to generate fake samples as real as possible. So this thing should be maximized. Similarly, it is written here, discriminator, it should maximize the real data while minimizing the fake data, and at generator, it should maximize the fake data. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is the loss function? At generator level, it has to maximize the okay, first I'll talk about discriminator. Okay, at discriminator, it has to do two things. First, recognize real images better and recognize fake images also better, because it has to minimize this thing, this function, which is based on the dzz, means which is based on the output, generator's output, which is fed to the discriminator, and this thing, it has to maximize this. It has to recognize real images better. So it will do two things, but generator will do only one thing. It will maximize the fakeness of the images. It will maximize the dzz, means it will maximize the output. It has to maximize the fakeness of the images. So by combining these two loss functions for discriminator and generator, the complete loss function will be looking like this. Okay, next slide. We can see some output here. Here in this presentation, I have not shown something about performance measure or evaluation, like how this accuracy is increased or not, because here our main motivation is to balance the data. So as an input, we have given this mitotic original images. I have applied a simple generative adversarial network, and this GAN was based on DC GAN. This was a deep convolutional GAN. We have applied two different deep convolutional neural networks at generator level and at discriminator level. We can have so many different type of GANs available nowadays, and according to our problem statement, we can use any one of them. So here, this is mitotic original images, and these are the generated images what we have generated from our GANs. Some staircase effect, something can be seen from the images, but as of now, it is better, and these images are working, can be working fine as a training set. So why we have generated these images? Because we have generated these images, and now these images can be behaving as a training data for our classifier, because in training we can do anything. We can do anything about our data until and unless we are not doing anything with the test data. So for training, we can even augment our training data of minority class for 10 times, 20 times. It is allowed, it is fine. So these are the mitotic generated images. So to see the effectiveness of this framework, efficiency of this framework, I had some other images also. Next slide, please. I had some other images also, which are some Golgi pattern and NM nuclear membrane pattern. These are some different kind of pattern. So I have applied that framework, that algorithm on these images also. These are the original Golgi, and these are the generated Golgi. Similarly, these are the original NM, and these are the generated NM. So we can see this GAN is able to generate similar kind of images after lots of training. GAN takes like some 2-3 days for proper training. So and we can see now what is important here. We can see, okay, the samples are generated. GAN is able to generate lots of samples which are similar for Golgi, which are similar for original Golgi, or which are similar for NM. But it is not important here. Means it is important, but we need to see whether the feature representation, whether the characteristic of the input data is remained same or not. Let's see, like in NM images, the characteristic feature of these images is that there is a ring-like of structure at the boundary. We can see this ring-like. So this ring-like of structure should be persistent and should be there in generated images also. That is our motivation. So here we can see that this ring-like of structure is persistent. These are coming out well. And here also these small blob-like structures are there outside this black region. So here in generated images also it is showing very well. It is visualized very well. So in that way, our generated adversarial network is working fine. Okay, so oversampling, undersampling, what we have discussed earlier. These were quite established techniques for data augmentation, and even like who are our end users, medical experts or medical physiologists, and like pathologists. These are our medical end users. So those people should be convinced what technique we are applying and what model we are delivering to them. So for other techniques, it is widely used. Those techniques are widely used, and people have validated those techniques, whether generated oversampled, undersampled, or weight balancing techniques. Those are fine, working very fine. Okay, bagging, boosting, those are fine. But for these synthetic images we have generated from GANs, actually here the validation is a bit different and bit difficult. Means who will validate, who will tell us whether we can use these generated images as our training data or not? So this is the big question here. Please, next slide. Yeah, this is the big question. How to convince medical experts for synthetically generated samples? Because like it took lots of year to convince them that we can deliver some computer assisted diagnostic solution who can assist them. So it was very difficult to convince them. And now we are generating some synthetic data. Means they spend lots and lots of hours to collect the data, and we are generating this synthetic data using GANs in just 2 or 3 days. So it is very difficult to convince them. So this is a very open problem. You can work on this. You can try this thing. So many papers are there on this problem itself, like how to convince medical expert. One paper is there, how to fool radiologists. So this is a very good paper. Some people have designed some studies. Like what I do, I generate some these images from GANs. I go to the medical expert, I go to hospitals, I show them images, and now I ask them whether I can use these images or not. But this is not a feasible thing, because every day we run so many networks, we run so many images, and it's not feasible to go every time to medical expert, and even those people are also very busy. So this is an open problem, and you can work very well on this. So next image, next slide, sorry. Okay, these are some selected references. At the bottom of every slide, I have given the reference, but these are some selected references which are based on GANs for medical images. You can go through these. These are very good publications, and these are some review paper like this one, GAN image medical based augmentation, medical image translation. So you can go through all these papers. Next slide. Okay, so this was the content from me today. Like, how can we balance the data? Maybe you can borrow these techniques. Actually, what happens, like in we have so many techniques, but for as we are doing applied work, we need to borrow the appropriate and effective technique from the pool of so many techniques. So we need to first dive into the domain knowledge. We should grab the domain knowledge. What kind of features would be sufficient? What kind of networks should be sufficient? If we are using a dense net, which is a 165 dimension 165 layers network, so it is useful to do or not. So like first we should learn, means my message for you all is this: we should learn the domain first, and then we should go to the technique. These are some useful conferences and journals for medical imaging. MICI, ISB, SPI medical imaging. These are really very good conferences, and these are some computer vision based conferences. These are image processing, and these are some transactions. Next slide. Okay, so okay, thank you so much, and thank you so much, organizers. Those people were really. Thank you so much for listening. So this was from me today. Any questions?
Thank you, Kriti.
Okay.
And now the session is open for questions. So if any queries, you can just unmute yourself and speak out. Okay?
Okay.
Hello. Yeah. Kriti, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the presentation. Hope you're having great time in US. So, so my question is, so that noise signal generator or the noisy signal, so is it coming from some distribution, or it's a random distribution, Gaussian distribution?
Yeah. People. Okay, yeah. So nowadays people are using random Gaussian distribution. Means generally people use Gaussian distribution. Means they don't focus so much on that because they believe like after backpropagation it will anyhow learn, and they do good amount of training for the classifier. But recently I have seen some papers. The people are started focusing on the noise also, like what kind of noise should be passed. Even in my recent work, I have done some modification in noise, like I have not added additive, and I have not used additive noise. I have used multiplicative noise. So the motivation was something different. So nowadays people have started looking on that also, but generally Gaussian noise is used.
Okay, and one more thing related to this medical thing.
Okay.
So you mentioned that antibodies.
Yeah.
So these antibodies are, means in general, it's common for all these diseases, or it's specific for particular diseases.
Yeah. There are so many kind of means antibody is general thing, but when antibody tries to attack healthy blood cells and tissues, it is known as anti-nuclear antibodies, and we can have around 50 to 80 different type of anti-nuclear antibodies, which are corresponding to different type of disorders. So all these type of disorders or diseases, these anti-nuclear antibodies are different. That is why we are actually getting so many different type of fluorescence patterns. So these are different type of ANAs. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay, thanks.
Hello.
Yeah, any more questions?
Shailesh, your voice is not clear.
Shailesh, you can use the chat box.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question.
Okay, yeah, sure.
You are using the GAN network and generating some images. Okay.
Yes.
So, what is the false negative rate? Have you observed this?
Yes. I have done all these
Means,
things. False
in
negative
percentage,
rate.
can you tell me approximately how was the false negative rate in this?
For false negative cases, I was getting less than 5%. Means all of my experiments, I was getting less than 5%. So false negative rate after complete classification, right?
Okay.
Yeah, means I'm talking about the generating images, after that feature extraction, and after that applying any classifier, and after that the performance the false negative rate was less, not more than 5%.
Okay.
Yeah, means if you
Thank you.
want, then we can share some results also over email or somewhere else.
No, I just
Results.
wanted to know as the image you are generating.
Okay.
So at least the idea of the false negative rate must be known. Huh?
Sorry, can you please repeat?
No. Yes. As you are generating the image, so the knowledge of the false negative rate, I just wanted to know how much it is.
Yeah, it was less than 5%.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in
Thank
some later experiment, it was actually less than 2-3%. Okay, any other question?
Miss Gupta,
We have a question from Sailesh in the chat box. You
Yeah,
please
how can we select which method is applied for over data, like under sampling, Siamese framework or GAN? How can we select? Yeah, that is actually very difficult, very good question, and very difficult to see and decide like what kind of framework should be applied. So right now, all of them are doing just some hit and trial, applying different techniques. Okay, we will apply this also, this also. So right now, there is not any definite criteria. Just we can see like what I see. In my work, I do some ablation, some ablative analysis. Okay, how efficient my system is, how efficient my algorithm is, and what is the testing time. So on top of that, I decide which technique should be used.
Hello, Anupma. Hello.
Yes. Yes.
It's Bishop Singh.
Yeah, Vishal sir, bolo.
I do have a question.
Okay.
You talked about GAN. I think it can be used for data augmentation. Apart from
Yes,
data
yes.
augmentation,
That's what we
what
did.
are can you tell me some? What I know, like we can use it for data augmentation.
Yes.
So can we use it for any other purpose?
People are generally nowadays, like some recent papers, people are using these GANs for translation of modalities. Like for let's say for one cancer, if we have two modalities to capture the cancer in blood sample, so we want to omit one modality. So GANs are using intermodality translation or parameter translation, means to learn from translation, to learn the parameters and data from one modality and generate the data for other modalities. So for translation thing, GAN is working very fine right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Kriti, there are questions from Prachi also. Could you
Yes,
take up
yes.
them?
Prachi is saying you acquired the images using microscope and made an image acquisition device. Actually, that thing we had not done. This was the publicly available data set. So medical experts and technicians do that thing and they provide us the data. I had some private data also, like I had contacted some pathology lab. So they see the images, they digitized it. They ask us like which type of image do we require and at what resolution. So they provide the images to us. We cannot do anything on that part.
Any more queries? Yeah, Shailesh sir, please.
Shailesh sir is asking, can GAN be used for 1D signal study? Yes, people are using that for also, and even you have correctly pointed out, for ECG signals, people are using GAN very much. Even for in ECG, it's no, I'm ECG. Oh, I was talking about EEG. I have read something about EEG. For EEG signals, people are using GAN. Is for ECG, I don't have any idea, but 1D signals are using in GANs. For separating the images, which technique use? Prachi is asking. Prachi, can you please elaborate your question? What for separating the images means at classifier level?
Prachi, you can unmute yourself and ask directly, if it's possible for you.
Not.
No, you're not audible, Prachi. Okay, then in images, how to separate? Oh, actually, this thing is also done by the medical expert. They separate the image and they give us. I think you are talking about the raw data. So in raw data itself, these are labeled.
Is talking about segmentation maybe.
Okay, segmentation. You are talking about segmentation. So for segmentation also, like this is a very big research area here. We have segmentation masks. So we have done something for about segmentation also, like for deep learning based networks, we have applied UNet or SegNet networks for segmentation. But for we actually had some segmentation masks also with the data, and that segmentation masks are acquired in laboratory itself using some another dye. So the characteristic of that dye is that it highlights the outer boundary of the cells, and when we digitize those cells, so we get the segmentation mask of original images. So many type of dyes are used in the laboratory itself, and so many different type of images are required along with. Okay.
And if there are no questions, then let's thank our speaker and end up this session.
Okay,
So
thank
thank you, Kriti.
you
But
very
before, let's make it memorable by taking a snapshot picture with everyone. So now I request everyone to kindly turn on your camera and let's have a good picture with our speaker. Request everyone. Today we want many participants in. So everyone, kindly. Saleh sir, better than yesterday.
Saleh had some problem with his camera.
So I'm waiting. People can join in. Yeah.
नहीं यूट्यूब में है
Any more coming in? Shall we click it?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Smile. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kriti. We had a wonderful session.
Yeah,
Thank you,
and
Mr.
one
Kriti.
more thing, Anupma,
Thank
if you
you.
want to share the slides, so I have some
Yeah.
updated slides because I had sent that email in very hurry. So those slides were, yeah. So I have some updated slide. I'll send you those one.
Okay. Thank you. See you all tomorrow. Tomorrow is our last session, so kindly be present. Okay? We look forward to your presence. Bye. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dev.
Bye. Safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye. Bye.